what a way to start a video. So we don't normally start videos when we riding a motorbike, do we? But we're in the old got to replicate the fault scenario. So I'm riding a GSX-R750Y, which is the model before the K1. It's not got very many miles on it, 16,000. It's a nice one. Feels like it's got a flat front tyre, the way it's steering. Apparently it's got a whiny gearbox, but only in top. Let's have a look. Oh my fucking god, he's not joking. I haven't got to ride this far. So that's 5th, and that's 6th. I don't know whether the mic will pick that up. Yeah, there's something very wrong there. Let me just... Oh my days. Can you hear that? Only under load though, not on the overrun. Okay, shortest road test in history, this. Let's go this way. We never go this way, do we? Welcome to Dursley. That's top. No, that's top. Right, that's 5th, and then this is 6th. Ready? Okay, shortest road test in history. I did ask him, I said, is it really obvious? Can you definitely replicate it? You know, I didn't want to start taking engines out and getting amongst it if it was one of those, I think I'm hearing a noise type situations, but fucking hell, there's something very wrong in that gearbox. So, get it back in the warm because it's absolutely freezing out here. And let's take the engine out and get amongst it. Tappy tappy. That's heavy. Okay guys, strippy muck strip. So it's out obviously. I've just spent a good load of time cleaning it, like properly scrubbing at it with degreaser and hot hose pipe in it, just getting it as squeaky clean as I possibly can, because I mean, obviously it's nice to work on a clean engine, but this thing is going to stay in the engine stand. I'm going to flip it over, I'm going to get the gearbox out of it. The only bits I'm going to clean are the auxiliary parts that I take off, and obviously the lower crankcase that comes off to get at the gearbox. I could put that in the parts washer and clean that, but I'm not stripping the whole engine, and I can't just put a half assembled engine in a parts washer to clean it. So when I split it along the gasket surface, I don't want there to be any risk of any shmoo falling inside. You know, I'm literally going to want to have the engine upside down, split the crankcases to get at the gearbox, and clean that gasket surface, put it back together again. I don't want to get sort of any more involved than necessary cleaning the bit that stays in the... Fucking hell, you're making a meal of this, Jim. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, let's take it apart. Let's find out why it's whiny, like one of my ex-girlfriends. Okay, that's not working for me. Camera's on the wrong side. That's better. I felt like I was in the way of the camera then. That's better, isn't it? So what I'm going to do is I just want to get at this so I can start ordering parts. I'm not... Sometimes when I'm taking stuff apart, I'll sort of clean as I go, just to keep things organised. But what I'm going to do is I bag all the bits. Just got loads of these polythene bags, and then just as it comes apart, I'll just bag everything, box it up, and then wash it at a later date when it's time for assemblage. But I sort of, what to say, I kind of know these engines upside down and back to front at this point. So in terms of wondering where stuff goes, it's not really much of a problem. You know what I'm saying? Whose dowel's going to stay in there? No. That one is. Oh, there's a washer there. Let's not forget that. Remember that other GSX-R? And I said there's definitely 2 screws under there, and there was only one. Do you remember that? There is 2 screws on this one. This is a slightly earlier model. What was the other one? A K... Oh, I can't remember now. A K2 maybe? Little rubber washer on that screw. You know about that. And on that one. Tell you what I am going to do. I'm going to remove that starter motor. Oh, come on now. Tappy, tappy. Ah! Exploding. Now I know what you're all thinking. Jim, why you're not using an air tool to take all these bolts out? We've had this conversation, haven't we? I'm fucking old school. I like to freehand it so I can feel what the threads feel like. If you've ever been putting an engine together that you've been rebuilding and it's all clean and beautiful, and you go to do a bolt up and you strip the fucking thread because you weren't paying attention when you took it apart, you'll know why I do it this way. It only takes, you know, maybe you've saved 5 minutes on a complete engine strip, but I like doing it this way. Okay, I want to feel what the threads feel like as it comes apart. You can normally tell just by cracking them off, you know, when they haven't been undone and you get that nice snap sound as they initially break free. That's a good tell that the thread's okay. And if you're just going at it with a fucking airline, you can't tell. There's maybe an argument for loosening them all by hand and then buzzing them all out, but whatever. Doing it this way. Tappy tappy. Marvellous. It's quite clean in here. In fact, it's very clean in here. It's not. So that fell out. A little bit of gravel, a little bit of grit. Okay. Spin it over and do the water pump and the generator cover. In fact, no, let's get the clutch off while we're here. So what's you thinking? Why do you think it's whiny? No sign of it jumping out of gear or anything like that, which is the normal problem with these things. I'm assuming we're going to find some damage to the teeth, because it's a constant mesh gearbox, a crash gearbox. I've done a video. I'm not going to bore you all to death in this video, but I have done a video. I'll link it wherever it is, up there somewhere, and in the description. There's a video called The Anatomy of a Motorcycle Gearbox, which, if I'm not mistaken, was on a GSX-R750. Could have been a 600. I go right down the rabbit hole explaining the intricacies of these types of gearboxes and how they work. If you really want to know how it works, go and watch that one, because there's no sense in explaining myself twice. Let's get all that out in one go, can we? No. Inspect a view. It's all in really nice condition as far as I can tell. We didn't have any clutch issues. It wasn't dragging or slipping. Let's get a little hooky tool. Actually, I've just dropped a bit of a bollock here, haven't I? I should have left the clutch pack in, because I need to windy gun that out. And if you've got the clutch plates in, you can... Oh, Jim! Pay attention. Let's put a few of them back in just quickly. Yeah, the reason for adding the clutch plates back in is so I can just put a little bit of pressure with my finger. Stop that centre bit of the clutch basket rotating. Okay. And now actually what I can do is I can just eject. I should have done this in the first place. Get rid of that tab washer. That bevel washer rather. I can just eject the whole thing. It's not unusual for them to get stuck on that spline, because the nut gets punched over to stop it from coming undone, and it marks the end of the spline, and then you can't get the fucking clutch basket out. bit of a pain in the bottom. There we go, thank you very much. I'm just going to load that back on there to keep it neat. Can't see from that angle, but there's a crank web here, ever so slightly in the way. Let's give that a turnage. There we go. Oh, come on now. The fuck? There we go, thank you. Shoot in there. Oil pump drive gear. Big washer. Has it got? No, it's the Hayabusa, isn't it, that's got the gear position sensor behind the clutch. Oil pump can stay there. Okay. Have I said, you might not know, these engines, they're a little bit special in that the crankcase is a three-piece crankcase. It's normal for engines to have the cylinders as part of the upper crankcase, so the barrels don't come off separately. The cylinder head bolts down onto the crankcase and the barrels are sort of combined. That's not unusual, but what is slightly unusual is there's a split line here, there and there, across the centre of this shaft. You can take the bottom half of the crankcase off, get the gearbox out without disturbing the crankshaft or any of the pinch bolts that are holding the sort of main bearings together. It makes it slightly less complicated to take apart. So you can get at the gearbox without disturbing the gear. Okay, let's spin it over and in fact let's get that out of the way. Is there a circlip? Yeah, I'll have to do that from the other side. Get the water pump off, get the generator cover off. Then we can undo the bolts and we can take the lower crankcase off and we can get at the gearbox and find out what the fuck's going on. So we'll get rid of this. I want to get in the shot. We'll get rid of this water pump and need a screwdriver for that Jubilee clip. I mean, technically, I could leave the water pump in position and it could come away with this half of the crankcase, but I don't know, that seems a bit rude. I sort of feel like I want to, some of the bits I couldn't get to when I was cleaning around this water pump, so let's get the pump out of the way and sorry, I think I'm in the way, am I? A bit. Okay, now let's get rid of that pipe altogether. It's kind of annoying. Thank you. Now then, that should just pull out of there. This gets its drive off the... Why will you not come out? It's stuck on the O-ring, I think. What was I saying? It gets its drive off the oil pump, which is on the other side. Oh, come on now. I haven't got the energy to fight with this. I really need to get some parts on order and I need to know what I need because, oh god, there goes my light. It's going to be, these bits are going to be back ordered. As you see all the shmoo I couldn't get to. Okay. Let's get that circlip off there, get that shaft out of the way. And then there's a load of bolts around the top and there's some coming in from the underside, the larger diameter ones. And then this crankcase can just lift off and we can see what the hell is going on. I've actually, you know, I said I was going to take that shaft out. I've left that shaft in because the plan is, as I lift the crankcase off, the selector drum and all the forks are going to come away with that, and it's going to leave the gearbox, the 2 clusters in this piece of the crankcase. I'm going to transfer those gear clusters over into the crankcase piece we've removed, and then the whole gearbox is in one piece then, the selector forks and the drum and everything, and we can go through the gears and we can see all the gears moving if I keep this shaft. Right, let me get this apart. Let's find an Allen key socket. Tight that. Let's go a bit of an angle so you can see as well. Got 1/6mm there, not be in the shot. Tappy tappy. Where is it stuck? On there. Oh, there's a dowel on that corner, that's why. Come on now, you know you want to. Oh God, one of the gear clusters is coming away with. That's annoying. I didn't really want that to happen. Right, go down there for a minute. Okay guys, so it's all laid out. In this half of the crankcase, this half has got the selector drum down here and the selector forks, all the sort of gear changing mechanism. So this is basically the complete gearbox. I'm not going into in any depth how this works. I think I said earlier on, there's somewhere on the screen is a little poppy out bit video called The Anatomy of a Motorcycle Gearbox, and I go down a massive rabbit hole and get into the nitty-gritty of how these things work and how they tend to fail. The way this one's gone wrong is a little bit unusual. Usually they end up jumping out of gear. You don't usually end up with a whiny gearbox in a particular gear. So at the moment, so this has got the clutch on this here, this is where the clutch basket would be. So this is the input side, and then obviously front sprocket on here. So at the moment, and obviously the clutch basket is driven by the crankshaft, by the engine. So when the engine is running and you're not in gear, this is what's happening. That's the input of the gearbox. So there's no drive bins transmitted through the gearbox. When you go into first gear, did you see that gear move over? Okay, there are some things called dogs which lock together. Go and look at the other video. So this gear moves over, there's a selector fork down in there, pushes that gear over. And what that does, it locks this large gear onto the shaft, because this one that's sliding is on a spline. Don't want to get too much more into it than that. This smaller gear is part of this shaft, so this pinion is driving this gear. That's first gear. Then we go back up to neutral, and if you watch which one moves, so this one by the looks of it, which would make sense. So this gear is now locked to the shaft. It's been driven by this pinion. You can work out which gears are which by just comparing the size. So you could eyeball it and know that that's first gear, just because of physics. Smallest input, largest output. And then the next one, the next biggest on this shaft, the next smallest on this shaft. Do you see what I mean? So you can, by looking at it, fucking waffling, you can physically see which gears do what. But I'll talk you through it. So that's second. Where are we going next? This is third. That's locked this gear to the shaft. Oh, that's confusing. Oh, this one. That's fourth. These two. That's fifth. So that's that one and that one. And then top gear. This is slid over and it's locked this gear to this shaft, because ordinarily it would freewheel, and it's driving through that. Now I've already eyeballed, because the noise is only in top gear, so it's without question, it's something to do with the way these teeth are meshing together, because regardless of what gear you're in, all the bearings are rotating in the same, not the same speed necessarily, but you understand what I'm saying. It's the same bearings. If it was a bad bearing, the noise would be there all the time, but it's really pronounced in top gear. I'll flash it on the screen. I've already eyeballed this top gear, and there's some damage to it, and there's a very distinctive sort of, you can see, catch it in the light, there's a, let me get a little pointer, there's a, I mean, you can feel the ridge with the end of this spiky thing. So it's going to need, as an absolute minimum, it's going to need this pair of gears. This one, which is actually 2 gears, I think. No, that's a single gear. And actually that's a single gear. Some of them, like this one, is one complete piece because the fork runs in the centre here. That's 1 gear. That would be more expensive. So it needs that one and that one as a bare minimum. There's an argument to maybe replacing this bearing. I'm not going to do that. Just, that's really expensive and a pain in the arse to change. I'm going to split both these gear clusters apart, wash everything down with brake cleaner, have a really good eyeball of them, have a really good look at the selector forks, check for wear. He says, can't get that out of there without a, I think it's stuck in that oil seal. Anyway, I'm not going to fight with it on camera. The oil seal here for the clutch push rod, that will be replaced. This oil seal will be replaced. There's loads of O-rings, there's some O-rings in here, there's an O-ring there, all the gaskets, you get the idea. Probably do that output shaft oil seal at the same time because it's not expensive, and while it's, yeah, I'm going to take this shaft out to clean things. Was it interesting? Obviously this is only part 1. I'm going to get some parts ordered now. I'm going to get this stripped completely, wash it down, inspect all the dogs in the gearbox and the selector forks, see what I need to order. There's always a little bit of a tug of war with a motorbike gearbox. When you get something apart, you're inevitably going to see wear on dogs, and you have to make an educated decision as to what parts you're going to replace. It'd be very easy to say, oh, there's a tiny bit of wear on this dog, we're going to replace that gear, that's another £150. Oh, well, and that one, and I'm replacing the dogs on this, I need to replace the one it meshes with, another £150. Before you know it, you've replaced the entire gearbox, and it's cost you a couple of grand in parts. So you have to be sensible, and it's just an experienced eye. When you look at stuff, you know what's acceptable and what isn't. Fucking waffling. Right, I'll see you in part 2. Hopefully part 2, well, when we get to part 2, I'm going to have a load of new parts here, and I can talk you through the assembling of the gearbox. There's a load of circlips. As these clusters come apart, you'll see in the other video, as these clusters come apart, there are various circlips along the shaft. They all need to be brand new. Anyway, that's the end of part 1. I hope you enjoyed it. Little bit of learning to be had, maybe slightly entertaining. Thanks guys, see you on the next one.